Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. We begin today's satsang, the prayer by Srimati Sapna Ganesh, followed by chanting of Muktakatrayam by Nanda Kumarji.
Dakshinamurti Sarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ramanacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya Vachikam Sarvavangmayam Aharyam Chandrataradi Tam Namah Satvikam Shivam Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana to everyone.
Ekam aksharam hrudi nirankaram bhasate swayam likyate katham Hridaya Kumara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram Yaham Maham Niti Sakshat Atmarupena Bhavi Hridi Vishamanasa Swam Chinvata Majjata Pavana Chalana Rodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam Deham Ranmayat Jadatmakam Aham Buddhirnatasyastyato Naham Tattata Bhava Shukti Samaye Siddhatma Sadbhavataha Oham Bhavayita Kuto Varadhiya Drishtatmanishtatmana Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Purno Vibhati Swayam Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala
Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang with chanting of verses from Upadesha by Uma Shripati and Ashwini Balaji.
नमो रमण कर्तुराज्ञया प्राप्यते फलं कर्म किं परं कर्म तज्जडं कृतिमहो ददौ पतनकारणं फलमशाश्वतं गतिनिरोधकम् ईश्वरार्पितं नेच्छया कृतं चित्तशोधकं मुक्तिसाधकं कायवाङ्मना कार्यमुत्तमं पूजनं जप चिन्तनं क्रमात् जगत ईषधी युक्तसेवनम् अष्टमूर्तिभृद्देवपूजनम् उत्तमस्तवादुच्चमन्दत चित्तजं जप ध्यानमुत्तमम् आज्यधारया स्रोतसासमं सरलचिन्तनं विरलतः परं वेदभावनात् सोऽहमित्यसौ भावनाभिधा पावनीमत भावशून्यसद्भावसुस्थिति भावनाबलात् भक्तिरुत्तमा हृत्स्थले मनः स्वस्थता क्रिया भक्तियोगबोधाश्च निश्चितम् नमो रमण
Namo Ramana. We now have the offering of Ramananjali Sangeeta. We begin the offering with a song by Srimati V. Radha along with Vallabh.
Namo Ramana to all. Today we have selected a song written by Sri Ganapati Muni. The music is by Srimati Sulochana Natarajan. Ya Munina Trataram Sri Ramam Kausalyevam Ya Munina Trataram Sri Ramam Kausalyevam Sri Ramam Kausalyevam Yoga Vidyopadeshakam Shri Krishnam Devakivam Shri Krishnam Devakivam Akaumara Brahmacharinam Deshikam Parashudharinam Renukevam Parashudharinam Renukevam Sarvabhuta Abhaya Pradam Shakyamunim Maya Deviva Shakyamunim Maya Deviva Bhakta Papa Bhaya Vratam Manushya Kumara Meriva
Manushya Kumara
Meriva Sarvairaiter Gunair Visishtam Bhagavantam Bhavantam Bhagavantam Bhavantam Lokasya Hitaya Avidya Andakarapanodhanaya Kuvadanam Dhurikaranaya Satyasya Vedanaya Tasishuve Tasyai Sundara Priyayai Saundaryambayi Namaha Saundaryambayi Namaha Saundaryambayi Namaha Namastat Adishtanaya च मातृभूतेश्वराय भगवते नमस्तत् अधिष्ठानाय च मातृभूतेश्वराय भगवते नमस्तत् पूज्यकेभ्यश्च रमण भागवतेभ्यः नमस्तत् पूज्यकेभ्यश्च रमण भागवतेभ्यः रमण भागवतेभ्यः नमो रमण.
Namo Ramana. We continue the offering of Ramananjali Sangeetam with a song from Savitri Krishnan and Jai Shri Ram Krishna.
सुब्रह्मण्यं नराकृतिं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं 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 पश्यामि देवदत्तेन ज्ञानेन त्वां मुहुर्मुहुः ब्रह्मज्ञानां परं ब्रह्म सुब्रह्मण्यं नराकृतिं सुब्रह्मण्यं नराकृतिं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं सुब्रह्मण्यं नराकृतिं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं न त्वं स्वामि गिरौ नाथ न त्वं क्षणिकपर्वते न त्वं वेङ्कटशैलाग्रे शोणाद्रावसि वस्तुतः सुब्रह्मण्यं नराकृतिं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं सुब्रह्मण्यं नराकृतिं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं सनत्कुमारं ब्रह्मर्षिं त्वामाहुर्वेदवेदिनः आगमानां तु वेतारः सुब्रह्मण्यं सुरर्षभं केवलं नामभेदोऽयं व्यक्तिभेदो न विद्यते सनत्कुमारस्कन्दश्च पर्यायौ तव तत्त्वतः सुब्रह्मण्यं नराकृतिं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं सुब्रह्मण्यं नराकृतिं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहं जय गुरुरमणं वन्देऽहम्. ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमण.
Namo Ramana. The third offering in Ramananjali Sangeeta will be from Revathi Shankar.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the Ramana Suprabhatam written by Shantananda Puri Swami of Vasishta Gufa. भित्वा गृहादिकसुदुस्तरमोहजालं शोणाचलेशचरणं शरणं प्रपन्नः कौमार एव भगवत्करलालितस्त्वम् आनन्दचित्रमणभो तव सुप्रभातम् भित्वा गृहादिकसुदुस्तरमोहजालम् शोणाचलेशचरणं शरणं प्रपन्नः कौमार एव भगवत्करलालितस्त्वम् आनन्दचित्रमणभो तव सुप्रभातम्. Good morning, Ramana, the supreme consciousness bliss. Even while yet a boy, you are fondled by the Supreme Lord Arunachaleshwara. When you sought his shelter after having torn asunder the impregnable net of delusion caused by attachment to home, etc. Arunachala's Purana was shining in my heart even before I could utter the words Amma and Appa, says Bhagavan. And when he knew that it was a place on this earth, when the time was right, he just fled away from home to his natural home, Arunachala. I present to you a song which talks about the same. This is Bhagavan's Arunachala Ashtakam, a Kannada translation of it. The Kannada translation is by Dr. N.S. Lakshmi Narayana Bhatta. Music is by Ranga Rao. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಹುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಹುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ಬಾಲ್ಯದಿಂದಲೂ ಬಿಡದೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನೊಳಗೆ ಹೊಳೆಯುತ್ತಲೇ ಇತ್ತೆನ್ನ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆಯೊಳಗೆ. ಬಾಲ್ಯದಿಂದಲೂ ಬಿಡದೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನೊಳಗೆ ಹೊಳೆಯುತ್ತಲೇ ಇತ್ತೆನ್ನ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆಯೊಳಗೆ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿಯೆಂದು ಅದ ತಿಳಿದ ಮೇಲೂ ಅರುಣಗಿರಿಯೆಂದು ಅದ ತಿಳಿದ ಮೇಲೂ ಅದರ ಮಹಿಮೆಯ ಮಾತ್ರ ತಿಳಿಯದಾದೆ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಹುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ನನ್ನ ಕರೆಸಿದೆ ಕಡೆಗೂ ನಿನ್ನ ಬಳಿಗೆ ಸ್ತಬ್ಧವಾಗಿದೆ ಚಲನೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನೊಳಗೆ. ನನ್ನ ಕರೆಸಿದೆ ಕಡೆಗೂ ನಿನ್ನ ಬಳಿಗೆ ಸ್ತಬ್ಧವಾಗಿದೆ ಚಲನೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನೊಳಗೆ. ನಿನ್ನಡಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ನಾ ಕಣ್ಣ ತೆರೆದೆ ನಿನ್ನಡಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ನಾ ಕಣ್ಣ ತೆರೆದೆ. ಪರಿಪೂರ್ಣ ನಿಶ್ಚಲನ ರೂಪ ತಿಳಿದೆ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಹುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ನೋಡ ನೋಡುತ್ತ ನಾನೇ ಅಳಿದು ಹೋದೆ ಆಲೋಚನೆಯ ಮೂಲ ಹರಿದು ಬೀಳೆ. ನೋಡ ನೋಡುತ್ತ ನಾನೇ ಅಳಿದು ಹೋದೆ ಆಲೋಚನೆಯ ಮೂಲ ಹರಿದು ಬೀಳೆ. ನಾನೆನುವ ಭಾವವೇ ಮೂಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನೆನುವ ಭಾವವೇ ಮೂಡದಲ್ಲಿ. ಕಂಡೆ ಕಾಣೆ ಎನ್ನಲು ಅರ್ಥವೆಲ್ಲಿ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಹುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ಹೇಗೆ ಹೇಳಲು ಇದನು ಮಾತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನೀನೆ ಇದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದೆ ಮೌನದಲ್ಲಿ. ಹೇಗೆ ಹೇಳಲು ಇದನು ಮಾತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನೀನೆ ಇದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದೆ ಮೌನದಲ್ಲಿ. ಮೌನದಲೆ ಸೂಚಿಸಲು ನಿನ್ನ ನಿಜವಾ ಮೌನದಲೆ ಸೂಚಿಸಲು ನಿನ್ನ ನಿಜವಾ. ತಾಳಿ ನಿಂತೆಯೋ ಹೊಳೆವ ಗಿರಿಯ ಭಾವ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಹುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಹುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ತಿಳಿಯರಾರೂ ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang with the reading and sharing by Nandakumar.
ನಮೋ ರಮಣ. In this, the book reading segment of our satsang, we continue to read from Forever is in the Now, the timeless message of Sri Ramana Maharshi, edited and compiled by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. We are reading through the article, the presentation by Professor R. Balasubramanian, who was the president of, he was the chairman of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research. He was also the head of department and professor of philosophy in the University of Pondicherry. His account is entitled The Self, Real and Pseudo, the real self and the pseudo self. We are on the third segment. We will reread the first paragraph, then continue with today's reading. There is something paradoxical about the self, for it appears to be both known and unknown. Self is not what is known. What is known is not the self. The Upanishad conveys this paradoxically about the self by saying it is unknown to those who know well and known to those who do not know. So this is the paradoxical statement about the self in the Kena Upanishad. Those who claim to know it actually do not know it, and those who say they completely do not know it, they are the ones who know. The point here is that it is not known by those who claim to know it, and what is known about it does not relate to its essential nature. So whatever we know about the self is not the essential nature of the self. Normally, there will not be any difficulty in knowing an object which is immediate and direct. This, however, is not the case with regard to the self. It is generally admitted that the self is immediate and direct. When the Upanishad introduces Brahman, it characterizes it as immediate and direct. Yet, Sakshat Aparokshat Brahma, for the most important reason that it is identical with the self, which is immediate and direct. Usasta asks Yajñavakya in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Usasta asks Yajñavakya, explain to me the Brahman which is immediate and direct, the self within all. The self that is within all. That the self, notwithstanding its immediacy and directness, remains hidden, eluding our grasp, is the problem. While the question how the self can be both known and unknown remains to be tackled, there is a further complication to the problem when the Upanishad tells us that the self cannot be brought under the category of known and unknown. This is the Kena Upanishad. The Brahman is surely different from the known. Again, the Brahman is above, different from the unknown. Thus, we heard the utterance of the ancient teachers who explained it to us that it cannot be brought under the category of known and unknown. If so, how can the self, which is immediate and direct, be other than the known and the unknown? It is therefore necessary to inquire into the paradoxicality of the self with a view to find out its truth. If anything is easily accessible to anyone, it is the self. For everyone refers to it as I and puts forth all kinds of claims such as I am strong, I am blind, I am happy, I know myself, and so on, using the first person singular in the place of the self. The first person singular is certainly known to one who uses it as the subject of one's statements in the daily discourse. If the I were the self, then there is no scope for doubt or error with regard to the self. It means that the self is known, so there is no paradox about it. The first question, therefore, is whether the I, which everyone knows as the knower, pramata, as the subject of knowledge, is it the self? Is it the self? If it is not the self, Then the second question that has to be asked is whether it is a substitute for the self. A substitute fills the place of another. In the present case, the I is not a silent substitute, but an active one functioning as the subject of knowledge, jnata, as the agent of action, karta, and as the enjoyer of consequences, bhokta, as evidenced by the statements such as, I know this object, I do this action, I enjoy the results of my action, and so on. So the I, in the capacity of a substitute for the self, becomes the functional self. In the context of the actions of the I, there arises the question whether the threefold functions it performs as a substitute for the self are legitimate functions of the self. If they are not, then the ascription of these functions to it, for which it is not responsible, is false. Leaving the question of ownership of actions for the time being, we can say that if the I were the substitute for the self, it is the functional self or de facto self, whereas the non-functional self, which is the real self, is the de jure self. Expressions such as empirical self, psychological I, day-to-day self, pseudo-self have been used with regard to the former. In the Advaita tradition, the real self is called Atman, while the substitute self, which functions in our day-to-day life, is called the Aham. For want of precise terms, using one and the same word but with different qualifications, Wittgenstein speaks of the real self as the philosophical I and the pseudo-self as the psychological I. So there is a quote from the philosopher. So there is the need for identification of the self for deciding whether the I is the real or the pseudo-self, and also for determining the ownership of functions performed by it. The last segment, the real self and the pseudo-self, which is also in the title. As stated earlier, the human being is a complex entity consisting of the self, the mind, the senses, and the body. While the mind and the senses are part of the subtle body, the external body, visible and tangible, is the gross body. Though the self and the mind are mentioned here as two different things, whether they are identical or different is a point at issue. There is no difficulty in differentiating senses from the body and the mind from the senses. There are 5 senses which are all instruments of knowledge, whereas the body is not an instrument of knowledge. It is well known that the non-functioning of a particular sense organ deprives a person of getting the knowledge of a particular object. Since the mind is subtler than the senses, the understanding of its status and nature is not easy, though a discerning person, through systematic inquiry, can unravel the mystery surrounding it. On the basis of the difference between the mind and the senses, the former, the mind, is called the internal organ, while the latter, the senses, are called the external organs. The mind, being what it is, and also because of its location, plays a crucial role in the entire range of cognitive, affective, and conative activities. First of all, it is through the mind that everyone sees, hears, and so on. For example, we refer to absent-mindedness, the non-functioning of the mind, as the reason for our not seeing an object, though other conditions such as presence of an object, the normal functioning of the visual sense, and the presence of light, etc., which are necessary for getting the knowledge of the object, are fulfilled. So the author has removed senses and body as clearly non-self. Now he is going to embark on inquiring into the mind, which the difference between the self and the mind is not so clear, he says. Secondly, the mind, which is subject to modification, assumes different forms which are called mental episodes or states. Depending upon the kind of modification it undergoes, we speak of the mind in 4 different ways as manas, buddhi, chitta, and ahankara, and associate 4 mental states: doubt with the manas, determination with the buddhi, memory with the chitta, and egoism with ahankara. Though entitatively it is one, functionally it is many. As an entity, mind is one, but functionally it is many. With a view to show that the manifold mental operations are the states or modifications or modes of the mind, technically called the vrittis of the mind, the Upanishad gives a list of mental states, the list being only suggestive and not exhaustive, and declares that each of them is identical with the mind. The list given from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the mental states are desire, resolve, doubt, faith, want of faith, steadiness, unsteadiness, shame, intelligence and fear. These are mind itself, says the Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka. The point to be noted here is that the notions I and mine which a person has are the states or modes of the mind which take place under certain conditions. Thirdly, it is the mind which is the discriminating faculty. Though the senses are instrumental in getting the knowledge of color, sound, etc., they cannot inquire into the merit or demerit of these objects. Nor can this be done by the self, which is only the seer and which is therefore the ultimate epistemic principle common to all kinds of mental operations. If we eliminate the senses and the self, what is left over is the mind to do the work of enquiry into the goodness or badness of things, guna dosha vicharakam. That is again Vidyaranya's Panchadashi and Ramakrishna's commentary thereon. That is, the author is clearly defining that the third quality of the mind is the ability to discriminate between good and bad, right and wrong, whereas that is not present in the senses which merely bring the data. Though the mind and the self are different, there is extreme difficulty in distinguishing one from the other. So here he is going to embark on why this is so difficult. The mind is proximate to the self. Though material by its very nature, it is capable of reflecting self-consciousness because of its purity. Bhagavan also says when in sadhana the mind becomes purer and purer, at some point we will be able to feel this purana. But that will not be the end of it. One has to identify with this purana. So the pure mind is able to reflect the self. Being inspired by the reflected consciousness in it, it assumes the nature of sentient being and plays the role of the subject of knowledge, agent of action, and enjoyer of consequences of action. So, the dependent nature of the mind is brought about here. By itself, it cannot be any of this for the simple reason that the mind is material, and what is material cannot claim any of these statuses. The self per se is eternal consciousness, eternal seeing, and it cannot itself claim any of these roles because it is immutable, kutastha, and non-relational, asanga. So neither the mind itself nor the self by itself can be cognitive, affective, and conative agent. But the reflected self in the mind, which is the material medium, or the mind carrying the reflection of the self, whichever way we look at it. But the reflected self in the mind, which is the material medium, or the mind carrying the reflection of the self, can be the agent of the threefold sense. In other words, the blend of reflected consciousness and the mind is the agent, but not the bare consciousness nor the bare mind. The blend of these two entities is called Antakarana Visishta Chaitanyam, that is, the internal organ qualified by the consciousness. The blend of these two entities is such that it is difficult to distinguish one from the other in the same way as it is difficult to distinguish fire from the iron in the case of red hot iron bar. Because they form a blend, the nature of one is falsely attributed to the other. Let us first consider the problem in the illustration. Though it is the fire that has the burning capacity, still we say that the heated iron burns, illicitly transferring the nature of fire to the iron. Similarly, even though fire does not have any form, still we ascribe to it the form of the medium in which it appears. For example, we speak of the round ball of fire, because the iron piece in which the fire is manifested is round in shape. In other words, there is the superimposition of the nature of fire, the power of burning on the iron, and of the characteristic of the iron, the round shape on the fire. This reciprocal superimposition, itara adhyasa, takes place in the illustrated also. The power of illumination, which constitutes the nature of the self, is falsely ascribed to the insentient mind. But for this illicit transfer, how can the material mind be credited with the power of seeing, hearing, and so on? In the same way, the modifications which take place in the mind, as a result of which it becomes the knower, doer, and enjoyer, are wrongly superimposed on the immutable self. So, the owner of the threefold functions is the internal organ qualified by the reflected consciousness, but not the pure consciousness which is the self. The mind, that is the internal organ, is not the self, but a functional substitute for the self. As an active partner, it becomes the de facto self, while the self, the inactive partner, which is a witness to the functions of the active partner, is the de jure self. The mind, therefore, is not the real self, but the pseudo self. Following the Advaita tradition, Shankara speaks about three kinds of self: the figurative self, Gaunatma, the false self, Mithyatma, and the real self, Mukhyatma. This is from the commentary of Sri Shankara on Brahma Sutras. What are the three selves? He says figurative self or Gaunatma, the false self, Mithyatma, and the real self or the Mukhyatma. When a person refers to his wife as his self, his language, which is figurative, brings out the closeness and importance of the wife to him. The self constitutes his essential nature. It is he, his wife or son, who is different from him, can only be his figurative self. But when a person identifies himself with his body, senses, and mind, and considers every one of them as his self, as evidenced by his state, I am a man, I am deaf, and so on, the body or the sense organ or the mind is his false self. Unlike the previous case, the difference between oneself and any of these entities is not perceptible. The linguistic usage also supports the sense of identity which he has developed due to ignorance towards these entities. For instance, in the statement, I am a man, the I which stands for the self is identified with the male form and vice versa, as if the two are not different. No one says, I am my wife, I am my son, but everyone says, I am a man, I am blind, and so on. Though the body, the senses, and the mind are different from the self, the person thinks, speaks, and behaves as if they are not different. So they are to be treated as false self, Mithyatma. Such a false identification of the self with the mind, the senses, and the body is called as adhyasa. So in the case of the false self, the difference between the genuine self and that which is wrongly viewed as the self is not noticed. Whereas in the case of the figurative self, the difference between the genuine self and that which is figuratively treated as the self is noticed. Since the self is different from one's wife, also from one's mind, the senses, and the body, it is spoken of as the real self, by way of contrast to figurative self and the false self. I'll read that again. Since the self is different from one's wife and also from one's mind, senses, and body, it is spoken of as the real self. So the third figurative self is calling somebody else as, oh, she is as though it is me. The son is as dear as though he is myself. That is figurative self. Then identifying with I am so and so, that is the false self. Whereas the real self is free of all the figurative and mithyatma. Since the self is different from one's wife and also from one's mind, senses, and body, it is spoken of as the real self, by contrast to the figurative self and the false self. It may be noted that the use of qualification real to the self has to be understood contextually. Since we have identified a figurative as well as a false self in our day-to-day life, we characterize the self, the sole reality, as the real self. So we have to give it a title as real self only because we have this figurative self and false self in our day-to-day activity. Advaita, as stated earlier, classifies objects into two categories, the self and the not self, for the purpose of epistemological and metaphysical analysis. Metaphysics is nothing but concepts like being, existence, all this which we use to represent the fundamental realities beyond the day-to-day realities that we see. In this broad categorization of self and non-self, everything other than the self may be conveniently brought under not self. If so, the objects of external world, the body, the senses, and the mind are not self. We cannot dichotomize the categories in this way unless there are criteria for distinguishing the self from the non-self. One of the criteria employed by Advaitins for distinguishing the self from the non-self is that while the self is the knower, the entire range of not-self is the known. The not-self, that is to say, is an object of knowledge. There is no difficulty in treating the external object, example a tree, as not-self by applying this criterion. The reasoning which can be formulated in the form of a syllogism is that the tree is the not-self because it is known, and anything that is known is the not-self. Syllogism is a usage in logic where we say all Kannadigas are Indians, all Indians are world citizens, so all Kannadigas are world citizens. So that is a kind of syllogism or logic that we use. Similarly, here the syllogism uses the tree is not self because it is known. Tree is known. All known is not self. Therefore, tree is also not self. Since the gross physical body, like any external object, is also known, the gross physical body is also the not self. Though the senses cannot be perceived like the body, they are undoubtedly known through inference, and hence they too come under the category of not self. Here also, the form of reasoning is the same. Whatever is known is not the not self, is not self. A sense organ is known, so it is not self. Though the mind, carrying the reflection of consciousness, functions as knower, assuming the form I, as for example in our claim I know this, it is also an object of knowledge in the same way as the senses and the body are objects of knowledge. The self is the witness to the manifold mental operations such as knowing, feeling, willing, imagining, dreaming, and so on. It is also the witness to the absence of mental operations. The I is not only the witness of mental operations, it is also the witness of absence of mental operations. In short, the mind, whether it functions or not, is known. The syllogist argument will be anything that is known is not self. The mind is known, so it is also not self. So one has to reject all this not self in Vicharana, and that consciousness which stands alone, having rejected all these as not self, that alone is the Satchitananda, says Bhagavan in Ulamai. We have remaining portion, which with Bhagavan's praise can continue in the coming week. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang with the practice of self-inquiry, to which the article by Dr. Balasubramanian and the reading by Nandakumarji has been leading us to the viveka between the self and the non-self. And this viveka we must apply through Atma Vichara, and Dilip Simha will be conducting the session of Atma Vichara for us.
Namo Ramana.
ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरम् योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधात् आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्. We will commence the Atma Vichara by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. I'll be reading from the book Guruvachaka Kovai, from the chapter Meditation on the Truth. The topic is the marvel of Maya. Verse 621. While reality remains as one, without taking birth as many, is it not a wonder that it manifests as if it is many, appears to embrace good and bad karma by turns, attains from time immemorial to the present day the 4 types of birth in the 7 species, and eventually triumphs and attains liberation. The 4 traditional ways of taking birth are through seeds, perspiration, eggs, and the womb. Insects were once thought to come into being through perspiration. The 7 species of birth are as devas, human beings, animals, birds, legless creatures, creatures that live in water and plants. The various combination of these incarnations add up to 8.4 million births that one can pass through on the way to the liberation. I'll read the verse again. While reality remains as one, without taking birth as many, is it not a wonder that it manifests as if it is many, appears to embrace good and bad karma by turns, attains from time immemorial to the present day the 4 types of birth in the 7 species, and eventually triumphs and attains liberation. Bhagavan very clearly says here, the reality is only one. And without taking birth as many, it has never undergone any modifications whatsoever. Even now, it is the one reality which is the Adhara of the I. That alone is even though the I appears in all of us as a thought, as a separateness, and then leading to the marvel of so many bodies, so many forms and everything, which is all as Nandakumarji read out, as the non-self, because they cannot survive on their own. They don't have an independent existence of their own. They are not sentient of their own. It is the self, that one self, which is the actual presence, which is the actual sentient one, to whom in which this I, this marvel called the first division I takes place, and then continues to then manifest as many, and then continues to get into the actions of, as it was read out, get into the actions of knowing and doing, and therefore attains many things as in the form of births, as 7 species, and everything. All this marvel simply appears just because that one truth is not attended to. That one reality is not given the actual reality, and the reality is attributed to this division, which then continues to create lot more division and lot more marvel, and push into lot more actions and lot more knowing, and therefore seems to be bewildering. Therefore, Bhagavan says here that it only appears. All of this is only an appearance. And that is the greatest blessings for all of us. And therefore, Bhagavan, who is the gracious one, the self, the one self, asks us to diligently inquire whenever this thought appears. Because it is through this medium, this wonder starts to manifest and bewilder us. And therefore he asks us, the moment a thought rises, not to pursue it, but to inquire to whom is this thought. And the moment we do that, it becomes clear that it is for me, it is for me. Thereupon Bhagavan has brought the attention from the multifold wonder to that one first division, the I. And therefore, he asks us to further diligently inquire, who am I? What do I really refer to as I? And when we truly inquire what we refer to that I as, because there is only one sentient thing, there is only one presence. Therefore, when we really inquire, who am I? We will be taken to that one reality which alone is the substratum from which these divisions have arisen or appear to have arisen, and therefore these appearance subside in that one truth which alone is. And Bhagavan says, by repeatedly inquiring, all the vasanas which make these appearance to keep repeating will all subside in that one truth, and that one truth will alone shine as I, until that one truth shines effortlessly. One should put the effort to inquire every thought that rises to as to whom is it, and therefore recognize it is for one, it is for me, and thereupon who am I? The immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we could have come to this most direct path, which abides us in that one reality through the inquiry of who am I, and in due course makes it the only reality that shines forth and all the appearance to subside. And let us do Atma Vichara for the next 10 minutes. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramananjali. Namo Ramana. Thank you all.
Ramana. We continue the satsang, the sharing by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande, the concluding episode of his dwelling on Adi Shankara's Astamalaka, which has been translated into Tamil verse by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, signifying its importance, and that's the reason why he has taken this up for Manana. And by Bhagavan's grace, we are finding that he had already completed the selection from Bhagavad Gita by Bhagavan, and now this is the second work that he has dwelt upon.
Oh. Dakshinamurti Sarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ramanacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhasha Krito Vande Bhagavanto Punaha Punaha Om. By Bhagavan's immense grace, we are concluding today the Manana, Shravana, I would say the Shravana, and a little bit of Manana on the Nididhyasana. So obviously, there's a greater sense of responsibility for all of us to do more of Manana and do Nididhyasana on the Hastamalaka Stotras. So last week, the Sadguru is generally compared with the mother, but his love is free from even traces of worldly delusion, of entanglement and attachment. The Sadguru is fascinated to see in the disciple the sporting of his own Atma Swarupa. Pleased with the narration of Hastamalaka, Bhagavan Shankaracharya now concludes the stotra with a prayer to Lord Vishnu. I request Sapna to kindly chant the verse number 14.
Sure, sir. Upadau yatha bhedatas sanmanīnām तथा भेदता बुद्धि भेदेषु तेऽपि यथा चन्द्रिकाणां जले चञ्चलत्वं तथा चञ्चलत्वं तवापीह विष्णो उपाधौ यथा भेदता सन्मणीनां तथा भेदता बुद्धिभेदेषु तेऽपि यथा चन्द्रिकाणां जले चञ्चलत्वं तथा चञ्चलत्वं तवापीह विष्णो. Thank you.
Thank you, Sapna. Thank you. Wonderful chanting. O Lord Vishnu, just as differences seen in crystals are only because of different adjuncts, in the same way, for you also, the difference is because of the different intellects. Just as the moon appears moving when reflected in moving water, so is your changeful appearance. I am of the nature of that ever-existing Atman. You appear differently. O Lord, you are Vishnu, the all-pervading self of all. O omnipresent Narayana, You alone exist everywhere, in every form, at all times. There is none other than you. Though the Lord is one, how does he appear to be many? This is explained with the examples of the crystal and the moon. Just as crystals, a crystal appears black when kept on suit, red with a hibiscus flower, and blue when kept on a blue cloth. But it is originally clear and pure, different from these colors. Similarly, O Lord Vishnu, you are Atman, the consciousness, Satchitananda, eternal, devoid of beginning and an end, complete, unattached, without any attributes, all pervading and immaculate. But due to different colors of the mind, which vary due to the three gunas, you appear different. Just as the moon reflected in water, the moon is seen reflected in different pots. Though the real moon is steady, its reflections may appear different and moving according to the conditions of the water in the pots. Similarly, the one motionless Atman appears as many and moving when reflected in intellects of different qualities. Many examples can be cited to explain this. A wall in itself is complete and uniform, but due to the different pictures painted on it, one misses the presence of the wall and becomes enchanted by the scene on the wall. One who misses the vision of the divine substratum gets deluded by the world. Iron can be shaped differently, either to make a chain or a crowbar. Both have different shapes, properties, and uses. Iron remains the same without modification. In the same way, one Atman manifests itself differently through different equipments, but remains changeless. On a cloudy night, the moon appears to be running through the clouds. Actually, it is the clouds that are in motion and not the moon. Similarly, the birth and death of the body are wrongly considered to be that of the Atman. This is a beautiful example. On a cloudy night, the moon appears to be running through the clouds. Actually, it is the clouds that are in motion and not the moon. Similarly, the birth and death of the body are wrongly considered to be that of the Atman. When a pot filled with water breaks, the image of the moon in it is lost, but not the moon in the sky. Similarly, the jiva undergoes birth and death, but the self remains immortal and imperishable. Some sugar, these are all beautiful examples. Some sugar canes are black, some hard, and some rough and twisted. But sugar, which is its essence, is devoid of all these blemishes. Similarly, in the self, the triplet, namely the knower, known knowledge, or meditator, meditated and meditation, is absent. From the standpoint of self-knowledge, bondage and liberation of Atman are imaginary. The snake seen on the rope in dim light disappears, and the rope alone is left as soon as it is seen in proper light. Ignorant people say that the snake has run away. Fools first say that the king drowned in the mirage, and when he is seen again, they say that fortunately he swam and came back. So in a desert, you will see a mirage. Mirage is what's called total internal reflection, where because of the heat, you will see water far away. So when you see that, a fool will say, actually, when the king is going on the camel, they'll say, oh, the king drowned in that. But when he comes back, they will say, oh, they say that fortunately he swam and came back. But actually, it was just a mirage. There was no water at all. The king did not get drowned. He did not swim and come back. The root cause of delusion is projection. of all opposite qualities on Atman by the mind in its wild imagination. In a state of deep sleep, the mind is not functional, so even the projection is absent and the world of plurality disappears. Thus Maya at play is mind. When ignorance ends in the knowledge of the self, the mind disappears and the bondage ends. This is the state of perfection or liberation. In this state, since there is no plurality, the omnipresent Lord Vishnu is seen everywhere. When worldly affairs are spiritualized, the papanna becomes paramartha. The intellect is easily absorbed in the state of samadhi, equipoise. The Jagat world is seen as Jagadishvara, Lord of the world. Pleased with the narration of Hastamalaka about his own experience of realization, Bhagavan Shankaracharya takes him completely in his affectionate embrace. The stotra ends here with the prostrations to the Sadguru. Sant Ekanatha Maharaj calls these 14 verses 14 vidyas to live life in self-knowledge. These powerful pointers to the self in 14 verses provide us a great insight into the illusory nature of all our conflicts and to the ever-present freedom within us. Imagine, so I'll just do a quick recap. Imagine the auspiciousness of the scene. We started the whole thing many weeks back. Hastamalaka sitting before the great Acharya Shankara, awaiting the unfolding of his destiny. In the same moment, Shankara, already seeing everything, knows exactly what to do. Shankara asks Hastamalaka, who are you? This question is the fundamental practice of vichara, self-inquiry. It is the way in which we discover our true identity and come to Atma Vidya, full identity of the self. We can consider the question, who are you, as the secret handshake of an exclusive sangam of mystics. The asker of the question already knows the answer, and the answerer who replies with, I am Atman, the self, closes the embrace into the association of fully realized beings. This was exactly how the 7-year-old Hastamalaka answered Shankara with the first words of he ever uttered, I am Atman. With that, Shankara knew he must mentor Hastamalaka in completing his sadhana. In a charming echo of this 8th century drama, Lewis Carroll, in his contemporary classic Alice in Wonderland, places Alice in a state of wonderment. In the presence of a caterpillar perched on a mushroom, smoking a hookah, repeatedly he inquires of Alice, who are you? And repeatedly Alice says, she doesn't know. She's distracted that her body is changing sizes in the wonderland. But she never inquires about that in her. But she never inquires into that in her, which is eternally unchanging. Hastamalaka has shown us that he is that unchanging self that has been the same even through the changing bodies from lifetime to lifetime. So too we are. Our sadhana is to become that eternal self so completely that we are asked, who are you? We will know that the answer without hesitation in this lifetime. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana.
Ramana, Doctor, thank you.
We continue with the sharing by Dr. Kadarani Rangaswamy on the Devi Sadottaram.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலம். Namo Ramana to all. With the abundance grace of Bhagavan, we are meditating on Devi Kalotra Jnana Vichara Padalam, very graciously given to us by Bhagavan in Tamil. And in the last satsang we saw, Tan Tanake Vetiyamam Tane Ilahidumal Pundramam Undru Punar. Hey Parvati Devi, Parameshwaran says, one has to merge with that Swarupa which need no light to get itself illuminated. That which is Swayam Prakasha, that which knows the self itself. No need to identify. Do we need to carry a lamp to see the Surya, the sun? Such is the self, as it is everywhere and all pervading and also within us. Even if we are sitting in a dark room and if someone asks, are you there? We spontaneously say, yes, I'm very much here. We need not see our hand, leg or our body to answer this question. It is Swayam Prakasham, self-illuminating. So, Parameshwaran says, merge with that self because that is Purnavastu. In the next stanza, Bhagavan says, Yavvuyir Yavvedam Tittiyal Seyyum Todilgal. That is the next stanza. Jivas are doing their karma according to their goal. If a person is interested in accumulating more wealth, he acts accordingly. If a person is aiming for fame, he will do the karma in that direction. Say for example, even if he is presenting a tube light for a temple, he will write in big letters, this tube light is presented by so-and-so on the tube itself. With the result, what happens? The brightness coming from that light will become dim. Likewise, I'll tell you an example, there was a wealthy person, but suddenly he thought he should not earn more, and he thought, I don't even need the wealth that I have accumulated till now. At that time, a sage came to his village. He went to see that sage and said, "Oh, Holy One, I want to get rid of this wealth, but I don't know the way how to do it." The sage asked him, "Where is your wealth?" "Here it is, Swami. I have packed it in such a bundle, you know." "Oh, this is the one." Sage grabbed that bundle from that person and ran. This wealthy person also ran after that sage. At one point, the sage sat under a tree with that bundle. Now, the sage asked that person, "Why did you follow me? You wanted to get rid of this wealth, isn't it?" That person kept mum. The sage continued, "So you have not removed the thought about your wealth from your mind. This is what happens when there is a mindset for accumulating wealth and for that matter attaining any of such goals. And Jiva are doing karma accordingly. And when they are aiming at the phala or the fruit, it is inevitable that they have to experience the fruit, whether it is good or bad for them. Likewise, Jiva may aim for many things in the world. There are few who has no attachment towards the worldly objects, but they may be aspiring for attaining mukti. So they will be doing karmas accordingly. Maybe they incline to attain mukti through bhakti marga, yoga marga, or jnana marga. Bhagavan says one has to follow any marga, but ultimately he has to surrender his ahankara that I am the doer. Once a devotee came to Ramanashramam for darshan and was doing Shashtanga Namaskaram to Bhagwan countless times. Bhagwan said, "This is not a physical exercise, man. The best Namaskara is Ananda Nivetam. Surrender your ego. Ahandai undanal anaithum undam. Ahandai indrel edum indru." When the ego rises, everything rises. But when the ego does not rise, there is nothing else. And once, a lady devotee came to ashram and declared to Bhagwan that she is going to stay in the ashram for 1 week and said, "Bhagwan, I don't have any attachment in this world. There is nothing that I want in this world. I want only mukti. Before I leave ashram, please give me mukti." Bhagwan just smiled and did not say anything to her. Then one day she came near Bhagwan and said, "Bhagwan, see, there are only 2 days left for me to leave this place. I beg you to give me moksha." Bhagwan again smiled and did not say anything. The day for her departure came. She pleaded with Bhagwan and she is going to leave and ask Bhagwan to grant her mukti. Bhagwan again smiled and that lady left. Bhagwan opened his mouth at this stage and said, "Is mukti a food packet that is to be given to everyone who are going from this ashram?" Then Surinagama and other devotees also said, "Bhagwan, we are also longing to get mukti. Please give us way for that." Bhagwan said, "If the thought that I should attain mukti also vanishes, what remains is only mukti. We need not go anywhere in search of mukti. Moham tavittu un mohamai vaittu men moham tirayan Arunachala." In Aksharamala, Bhagwan says the same thing. "Hey Arunachala, you have done a very good thing. You have relieved me from all the worldly attachments from me. But I still have the thought and inclination to attain you. That is a craze. When are you going to relieve me from that craze of attaining you? Because only then I will be relieved from my body conscious and can merge with you." Tirumular says, "Asayarumin, Asayarumin, Isanodayinum Asayarumin." Destroy all your desires, including the desire to attain Ishvara. Because till I have the desire to attain something, let it be Ishvara himself, then there is a difference between me and the Ishvara. But the truth is not like that. The difference is seen between Jiva and Ishvara is due to Ahankara. So Bhagwan says, once that Ahankara is destroyed, only the self alone will be shining. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang with the sharing by Ujjwal Jagadish on Ramanacentre.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha. Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha. Kechit Yoga Vidam Purasara iti Prajnani Buddhya Pare Sadhu Kaschidati Tare Gurudiya Kepyangri Padmam Tava Sevante Ramana Vidana Manuja Kshemaya Jatakshitau Dvitrasvam Girijanka Pita Nilayam Jananti Devam Guham Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha रमणाय लोकगुरवे नमः रमणनिगे लोकगुरुविगे नमन रमणनिगे लोकगुरुविगे नमन ಕೆಲವರು ಯೋಗಿ ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠನೆಂದೆಣಿಸುವರು ಜ್ಞಾನಿ ಎಂದೆಣಿಸುವರು ಇತರರು ಸಾಧು ಎಂದೆಣಿಸುವರು ಇತರರು ಗುರು ಎಂದು ನಿನ್ನ ಪದ ಕಮಲವ ಸೇವಿಪರು ರಮಣ ನಾಮಾಂಕಿತನೆ ಮನುಜ ಕ್ಷೇಮಕ್ಕೆ ಭುವಿ ಜಾತನೆ ವಿರರರು ಗಿರಿಜಾಂಕ ಪೀಠ ಸ್ಥಿತ ಸ್ಕಂದನೆಂದರಿವರು ರಮಣನಿಗೆ ಲೋಕ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ನಮನ ರಮಣನಿಗೆ ಲೋಕ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ನಮನ. We are meditating on the 15th verse of Ramanacentre written by Ganapati Muni, and it has been compiled in this format by Ramana himself and given the title Ramanacentre. Here, Ganapati Muni is telling, O Ramana, different people approach you in different ways. They see you as different embodiments and they all search, seeking that truth in you. Some see that you are a great yogi who has attained the pinnacle of yoga and they are rushing to you or to attain that same state of supreme yoga. And some people see you as a great jnani and they seek you to understand and realize the truth. And some people think you are sadhu, the compassionate one, and they come to you asking their little desires. And some think of you as guru and they seek you as the disciple and they surrender to you thinking you are a great guru. But, O Ramana, they all serve your lotus feet, thinking of you as various things, but they really do not know who you are. Only a few, and he mentions dvitrastvam, only 2 or 3 alone know who you actually are. Srimati Sulochana Natarajan, once for our seminar, every seminar we used to have an exhibition and a theme was decided and different articles were decorated and kept based on that theme. And one of the theme was the 3 M's of Bhagavan Ramana. And the 3 M's were Mother, Muni and Muruganar. When Ganapati Muni says only a few, 2-3 understand who you really are. And among those 2 or 3, here Ganapati Muni says, I am one of them. I know who this great master is. He is not ordinary human being. He is Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. That is what he has told the whole world, done the Gosha to the whole world. And I know the truth of this great Guru. And the mother who surrendered, getting the first Upadesha from Bhagavan Ramana, understood the truth that there is nowhere that she has to go. And she came and surrendered to Bhagavan Ramana. And she told, even if you throw this body after it dies into the thorny bushes of Arunachala, it is fine. I want to drop my body on your lap, said Bhagavan Mother Alagammal. And she completely surrendered because she completely understood who Ramana was. And Muruganar Swami, who was waiting for a guru, as soon as he got a gift of Arunachala Aksharamalai and Who Am I book, Naan Yar, as soon as he read, he saw that it is so simple yet so profound, and he realized this cannot be written by anybody else other than Lord Shiva himself. So at that moment he decided that I have found my guru, and he resides at Arunachala. And very first chance, he quickly came to Tiruvannamalai and he surrendered completely to Ramana. At that moment, Muruganar Swami had understood who Ramana was. Even before seeing Ramana, he had written a song as a gift to him, as a Guru Dakshina. He had written the song called Deshika Padikam, where he sings of Ramana and how the words before even seeing Ramana. He had understood who Ramana was, and so he was drawn to Ramana, and Ramana gave his very state to Muruganar Swami too, and all those true seekers who came and surrendered to him. But the compassion of Ramana is, Ramana has come into this earth only to save all the people. There is a famous story of Kabir, where one of his disciples says, "Oh Kabir, you are giving lectures to all these great people. I don't think nobody of them deserve these lectures that you are giving. Nobody is even, they don't even have the dedication to follow the rules and the instructions that you are giving, the upadesha that you are giving. Nobody is following. Everybody is simply coming and sitting simply for time pass," said one of the disciples. Okay, so Kabirji, I will do an idea. Okay, now you be inside the kutira where you are staying. I will only send those interested ones alone, those who are really deserving to get the upadesha from you. I will send only them inside the kutira, said the disciple. And that disciple held a knife in his hand and told, "Only those who are ready to give their lives for the Guru, they alone can come into the kutira and get the instructions from Kabirji," said the disciple. And as soon as that was told, only a few people were ready and stayed back, and all the others ran away. And Kabirji came out of the kutira and he started running behind all those people. And the disciple started running behind Kabirji and told, "Kabirji, what are you doing? Those are the people who are waiting, who are deserving to get your instructions. Those are the ones who are not ready to give their life. They are running away." And Kabir told, "These people who are interested, the God will show them the right way. The God will appear as the Guru and show them the right way. But these people who are running away, they need a Guru. So I am running behind to give them the instructions, to give them that supreme instruction to get back to their own true nature, which they are missing and which they are wasting this lifetime. I am going to help them," said Kabirji, and ran behind those devotees who are running away from the truth. Such is the compassion of the Guru, and Ramana is that Guru who has come into our lives to change our lives. We hear of this story of Khannaji, which we present in our dance ballet. Khannaji was actually born in a big family with lot of brothers and sisters. So he had seen lot of poverty. So at the end of his career, studies and all, he had realized that only goal in my life is to acquire a lot of money and to lead a very, very comfortable and a life filled with all the pleasures of the world. So he thought that is the only goal that he had in his life. So he grew up to become a very successful businessman. And once he was very successful in businessman, he had a lot of money, and he spent all his time partying with alcohol and other pleasures that he thought would give him happiness. And he was spending his life like that. And once he was staying for a business purpose, he was staying in a cottage, and there he had finished all his work and made a lot of profit, and all the profit he had kept in his suitcase. And he had one attendant, and the attendant came to Khannaji, who was intoxicated, and he came and requested, "Khannaji, I have to go early, Swami, because my wife is pregnant and she is about to deliver a child, so I have to go back, and I need some money also. Can you please lend me some money as bakshish? I have to go early today. Can you please give me that permission?" said the attendant. And Khannaji, in his intoxication, told, "What do you think? The money grows in the tree or what? I have earned this money with a lot of difficulty. Okay, I'm not going to send you so early. Go and get me whatever I want." So he threw the money on his face and gave him the instructions to get him more of alcohol and the food items that he wanted. And he was so intoxicated, Khannaji, that his suitcase, which had all the wealth, all the money, was open, and even the door was open. And seeing this situation, the attendant felt it is not safe to leave him alone here and go. I'm sure that somebody is going to come and rob him of all the money. So that attendant stayed back without even going to take care of his wife. He stayed back there the whole night. And when Kannaji woke up from his intoxication early in the morning, he saw that this attendant is waiting outside the room. And he went and he realized that he saw that his bag full of money was open and everything was open. The attendant had the liberty to take away the money and go, but he did not go. So at that moment he realized, I am thinking this money is everything. The money will give me joy. If that was the truth, this attendant would have taken the money. But there is something more precious than the money, something which is more valuable. And this great attendant had showed me this truth, and he is the guru. So he falls at the feet of that attendant, and attendant is embarrassed, and he tells, no, Swami, I waited for you because I could not leave you in this position. Now please give me permission. I have to go back and see what has happened to my wife. And the God would have taken care of her until now, and I will continue with my duty. Saying this, he left that place. And Kannaji, this transformed the life of Kannaji. And from that point, he was waiting for meeting the guru. And his guru, one of the guru that he knew, he came in his dream and gave him the instruction that he should go to Ramana at Tiruvannamalai. And that was the call of Ramana. And he came running to Tiruvannamalai with his wife, Premavati, and they both surrendered to the feet of Ramana. And there's an interesting incident that V. Ganeshan records. He says, Kannaji went to Ramana and told Ramana, I want you to be my guru. You have to agree that you are my guru. I want a spoken confirmation that you are my guru. And Ramana told, the guru is always there. And Ramana told, the guru is within. But he was not ready to accept this. No, Bhagavan, I want you to say that you are my guru. Give me this instruction. Give me this affirmation that you are my guru. And Ramana told, the guru outside is telling there is guru within. And as soon as this, the Kannaji heard this instruction from Ramana, he understood, yes, Guru outside is telling that Guru is within. That Guru who is ever shining within us, who is guiding every step, has come in the form of Ramana and telling us the Guru is ever available within you. Turn within and find out the truth, who is shining ever within you, as the Guru said, Bhagavan Ramana. And this is an instruction for all of us, that Ramana has come to us. He is none other than the Guru Guhaskanda, who is ever abiding in the lap of Chinmayi, the self. And he has taken this human form only for the good of the humankind. And he has come to tell us that the Guru is ever shining within you, and that Guru is guiding every step. So with complete faith in that Guru who is shining within, we need to continue our sadhana, and he will reveal the truth at the right time. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations once again to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. As Ujjwal Jagdish was just telling us, it is out of great compassion that the self, the Skanda Tattva, the self, which some people have intuited as the son of the self Skanda, which is not different from the self, which is the Aham Spurana, which is the compassionate form of the self. Whichever it is the self out of spontaneous compassion has manifested as Ramana. The self out of its, Muruganar Swami says, spontaneous grace, not by choosing, not by choice, but by nature. The self has chosen to embody itself. And while being embodied, it has also chosen a name. That name by which we know, by which the self has been known for ages. but by which now the self manifest is dear to us, is the name Ramana. And by the same compassion, that self has allowed us to address it by many more names. Vishwanatha Swami has listed 108 names by which we can address the self, or by which we can remember the glory of the self manifest as Ramana. And more specifically, meditate on the life, the glory of the Charitra, the Sacharitra, the beautiful, the purifying life of Ramana. And we are on the 15th Nama in this litany of names, the 15th, which is Srimad Dvadashanta Mahastale Labdha Vidyodayaya Namaha. And we dwelt upon the different kinds of learning, if we can call that, which came to Bhagavan. Ganapati Muni says that while describing Bhagavan's composition on Arunachala in Sanskrit, the Arunachala Pancharatnam, Muni says that crowds of brilliant ideas are waiting to be used by Bhagavan in his words, in his compositions. Similarly, we can say that the different kinds of knowledge, the different kinds of learning, all the vidyas must have been waiting to be accepted. Labdha, he got it. He got it from where? From the goddess of learning herself. She must have been waiting to give it to him. And he got it in the place of Meenakshi, Mother Meenakshi, the great Shakti. She who gave to Skanda the veil, the Shakti. It's called Shakti, the spear, the veil, it is called. It is the name it goes by is Shakti, Shakti veil. Because it is given by Mother who is Shakti, who is power, who is the totality of power. She is the Chit Shakti. She is the power of consciousness. And she gives that to her child Skanda to destroy the Mahishasura. So here also it is Mother in Madurai, Dvadashanta Mahasthala. Mother gave to Bhagavan certain kinds of learning, certain information. Labdha Vidyodayaya Namaha. And it was the beginning of the learning which she was to give him. The completeness of it would come automatically at one point of time in that divine play. But that was to be later. But here, therefore, Vishwanatha Swami says, Labdha Vidya Udayaya Namaha, Vidyodayaya Namaha, the beginning of learning, the beginning of Vidya came to Bhagavan. And we saw that he learned many things. He learned friendship, he learned academics, he learned Tamil very wonderfully. He learned the glory of surrender. He learned how to give himself freely to one and all. And he learned the beauty of sports, sporting, the leela, the wonder of sporting. He learned certain martial arts as well, the capacity to conquer, to win, to face the enemy without fear. That's what one does in a martial art. One decides to face the enemy. In a sport also one may be winning, one may be competing with somebody to win, to have jaya, to have victory. And in the martial art, it is fearlessness. The fearlessness he learnt. And this, having learnt all this, he learned that Arunachala is a place on earth. Arunachala is a place on earth. He learnt that Arunachala, that glorious experience that was ever shining within him, ever shining within him. Arunachala, 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 that throb, that spurana which was constantly happening within him, that Arunachala is a place on earth. It can be reached here on earth. And that is what Bhagavan tells us in Upadesha Saram, Vindati iha jivastu devikaha. While you are on this earth, while you are in this body, you can achieve, you can reach, you can experience the divine. And that revelation came to him. And then, soon after that, another learning came to him. And that was also as if by chance. Just as this was as if by chance that a relative came and told him. And as if by chance, Bhagavan's life we will find many incidents happening as if by chance. Yadricha, it is said, as if by chance. One of the devotees told me that's an important word in the Ramayana. By chance. But it is the beautiful play of the divine. And it happens so very naturally. All the miracles of Bhagavan in the lives of devotees happen in the same way. Very natural. Because the self is so natural. And Bhagavan has manifest to reveal the naturalness, the sahaja state of the self. Not just its wonder and glory, but its absolute availability, its absolute naturalness. So also by chance, Bhagavan saw that book called Periya Puranam, the lives of the 63 Saivate saints, the great Saivate saints, recorded by Sekilar. It is the Periya Puranam, it is the big story, it is the huge story. Because the story of each and every devotee is the story of the Lord, and it is so grand. The devotee may be simple, but the story is very grand. In recent years, Sri V. Ganeshan has written Ramana Periya Puranam, the story of many devotees of Bhagavan. And each one reveals the glory of the Master. Even so, Bhagavan read this Periya Puranam and he was completely overwhelmed by the devotion that is there. That is the undercurrent of the Periya Puranam. The magnificent devotion, the love that every devotee had for Shiva. That they were ready to give their all to Shiva. Their lives were nothing to them. Their relations were nothing to them. Everything, their wealth was nothing to them. They were ready, they were yearning maybe to give everything to Shiva. And this Bhagavan read and immersed himself in Madurai, in that flood of bhakti. He began to swim in that flood of bhakti. He who was an ace swimmer in the Vaigai river, he became an ace swimmer in the flood of bhakti. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We continue the satsang, the chanting of verses from Arunachala Aksharamanamale by Srimati V. Radha and Vallabh.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. கொடியார் மயக்கியன் போதத்தை பறித்து முன் போதத்தை காட்டினை அருணாச்சலா. போக்கும் வரவுமில் பொது வெளியினில் அருள் போராட்டம் காட்டருணாச்சலா. பௌதிக மாமுடல் பற்று அற்று நாடும் முன் பவிசு கண்டுர அருள் அருணாச்சலா. மலை மருந்திட நீ மலை தீடவோ அருள் மலை மருந்தாயொழில் அருணாச்சலா. மானம் கொண்டுருபவர் மானத்தை அழித்த விமானம் இல்லாதொழில் அருணாச்சலா. மிஞ்சிடில் கெஞ்சிடும் கொஞ்ச வரிவனியான் வஞ்சியாதருள் என்னை அருணாச்சலா. மீகாமன் இல்லாமல் மாகாற்றலை கலம் ஆகாமல் காத்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. முடியடி காணா முடிவிடுத்தனை நேர் முடிவிட கடனிலை அருணாச்சலா. மூங்கிலன் முங்காட்டு முகுர மகாதனை தூக்கி அணைந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. மெய்யகத்தின் மனமென் மலரணையில் நம்மை கலந்திட அருள் அருணாச்சலா. மேன்மேல் தாழ்ந்திடு மெல்லியர் சேர்ந்து நீ மேன்மயுற்றனையன் அருணாச்சலா. மைமயா நீ தருள் மையினால் உனது உண்மை வசமாக்கினை அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி. அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி.
Namo Ramana. We conclude today's satsang with the chanting of Ashtotra and Puja to Bhagavan. The Ashtotra Puja will be performed at Dilip Simha's altar by Dilip Simha, and the chanting will be by Vaibhavji, Prarthana, Uma and Ashwin.
नमो रमण. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्विमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. ॐ महासेन महोंसेन जाताय नमः. ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः. ॐ गुरवे नमः. ॐ अखण्ड संविधाकाराय नमः. ॐ महौजसे नमः. ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः. ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः. ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः। ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः। ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः। ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः। ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः। ॐ षोडाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः। ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः। ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः। ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ तीव्राय नमः। ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः। ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः। ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः। ॐ तपोमयाय नमः। ॐ उदासीनाय नमः। ॐ महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजतचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ पूर्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः।
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्री शोणाचलद्भूतस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्गसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः ॐ ऋच्चातिकरसान्निध्याय नमः ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः ॐ गुहाय नमः ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः ॐ देवतमाय नमः ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः ॐ सेनान्ये नमः ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः।
ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्य तद्दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शनसुखमङ्गलमुख सकलजीवहितसम्मुख ब्रह्मसङ्गिये नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानन्दपुष्ट परममहर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि। बोलो भगवान श्री रमण जय।